Hey guys, Brent Hull here for the book, talking today about going through this source material and figuring out how to get organized. Now, I've pulled out 10% of the books that I'm going to be using, right? And what I want to share with you is how to go through this material and how I plan to use it and what's going to be most helpful. Now, there's kind of three different book types here. One is kind of a newer book. This is a Thomas Jane book called The Finest Rooms in America. Now, what that means is that he's an interior designer, but he is looking at historic rooms. This one's in Charleston, South Carolina, the living room of the Randolph Martz and Jean Waddell house, right? So that's an earlier style room. You see rim locks, you see beadboard batten doors, right? Chinese parlor winter tour, of course, we've been there. So we've got new books like this that will lay out the best rooms. The problem is that book doesn't necessarily identify the best moldings and all these tiers. There are things to look at, there are things to gain a sense of reference of what we should study and what we shouldn't. And that's really the filter that we have to put on this thing. However many Georgian houses there are in America, let's say there's 200, right? Let's say there's 500. How do we put all those together? We can't include all those things. What's representative? What's the best example? So this part, and probably the longest part of the research of this book, will be building files of, and it'll probably be done in an Excel spreadsheet, of houses by when they were built and kind of what's in them, right? And so I'm going to be building a spreadsheet now, kind of working out what houses are appropriate, what houses we want to study. And so, pulling these books out helps. Now, that's a new book. Here's another new book, okay? There's two new books, and these are great. In fact, I'm going to recommend them on my Thursday book review. But these are new books of surveys that guys have taken fairly similar to what I'm doing, where this is the treaties, pattern books, and catalogs of the American architecture experience, right? And so they are studying, bungalows and Victorian houses and everything else, right? And showing how they came from books and how they're designed. Now, the good thing about this book, and one of the interesting things he studies here, is he actually lays out the architectural books, and this is very important, the architectural books in the early 18th and early 19th century. So that's in the 17 and 1800s. What books were guys designing from? And there was a couple studies done that showed the books that were available in America. Now, the reason this is so important is when Port Royal got built, okay, how did they come up with that design? How did they figure out what they were going to do? Well, we know from that chart which books were available and whether they studied a Palladio book or an Abraham Swan book or a James Gibb book, right? We can look at that and kind of understand what design ideas were available at that time, what they copied and what they used. So those reference books, and here's another one, Building History of Northern New England. This guy, breaks out wire and metal lath and when it was available. Those are things we're not going to really cover in our book, but there are things in here where he talks about the joinery of window parts and things like that, which is very helpful. So there will be some gathering from these other sources that we look, but mostly I'm going to be looking at historic books that were done in the 1890s to the 1930s that break out different regions. Now, there's a whole collection of them here. For instance, the Architectural Record of the Old South, Architecture of American Colonies. This one's Colonial Churches in Virginia. This one's Newport, Hudson Valley, early Delaware. And I'm telling you, there's ones from Pennsylvania, from Connecticut, from New York. Essentially, every little era of that period is put together into these books. So that will help us build our library. The best books are going to be books like this. Now, this is the bound collection of the White Pine series. And the reason these are so important is they are going to actually have in here, and this is the key detail we're looking for. They study historic areas and actually have line drawings and line details that I can look at to study the proportion, scale, and shape of the molding so we can start figuring out what was there and what was available. So in here they catalog and show us federal entrances and different details that would have been used that are going to be very helpful. Another book like this one's called Colonial Details. This is the 1890s, but look at all those moldings that it lays out here. And it identifies the house, it tells me where it was, it tells me when it was built, and this is the gold mine of information that I'm going to be looking at to try to figure out what we should study and what we should put together. So, you know, I may go dark here for a little bit on the Wednesday Pops because I've got to dig into this information and figure out what we're going to study and what we're going to do. I'm going to be trying to share information and trying to be sharing ideas of what I'm learning, but this is the, you know, the heavy lifting part of the book where I start going through these rooms. This was the Reed House in Newcastle, Delaware. Okay, so I'll go to my Delaware book, I'll see how important this is, I'll study whether this is a detail that we need to look at, and then we'll come back and start cataloging and putting together those details. So heavy lifting is about to start, but I'm going to be, you know, digging through my whole library, essentially going through every book on every row, trying to figure out how to put all this information together and building a huge, massive spreadsheet of, so if I did that Reed house, what are the built-ins like? What are the stairs like? What is the entry like? What are the moldings like, right? Cataloging and putting all that together so that we can begin categorizing by type. Built-ins, this one was 1820, this one was 1850, this one was 1740, right? So that we can see what's going on, see what's happening, catalog that change, and really learn a great deal. Okay guys, so I hope you're enjoying this, learning in this travel and figuring out how we're gonna put it together. If you see holes in my thinking, if I'm missing something, let me know. But the heavy lifting starts now. I'm gonna be going dark a couple times just so that I can start digging into this, but I wanna also share the fun things that I'm learning so that we can all grow and get better together. The past is full of great design ideas that will help us build better today. That's the point of this thing. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook, Hull Millwork, Hull Homes. Sign up for the newsletter. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. I'm Brent Hull, thanks for watching.